J'ouvre maintenant.
I call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 12 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Transport, Infrastructure and Communities, pursuant to Standing Order 108.2 and the motion adopted by the committee on Monday, January 31st, 2022. The committee is meeting to study the state of Canada's supply chain. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format, pursuant to the House Order of November 25th, 2021. Members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. Per the Director of the Board of Internal Economy of March 10th, 2022, all those attending the meeting in person must wear a mask, except for members who are at their own place during proceedings.
To clarify some things for our witnesses. Firstly, please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. For those participating by video conference, click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, and please mute yourself when you're not speaking. Interpretation for those on Zoom, you have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either the floor in either language, or English or French. For those in the room, you can use the earpiece and select the desired channel. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. Finally, to ensure members are provided with the time they have been allocated to ask questions and hear testimony, when the allocated time is up, I will interject to let them know and let you know, and I encourage you to hold your thoughts if you do get cut off until the same member or another member addresses the same theme or question. Appearing before the committee today, we have from the Association of Canadian Port Authorities, Daniel Robert Gooch, President and Chief Executive Officer, Debbie Murray, Senior Director, Policy and Regulatory Affairs. From the Canadian Airports Council, we have Manat Pasher, Interim President. From the Chemistry Industry Association of Canada, we have Bob Masterson, President and Chief Executive Officer. Good to see you again, Bob. We have Cara Edwards, Director, Transportation. From GCT Global Container Terminals Incorporated, we have Marko Dekovic, Vice President Public Affairs. From the Seafarers International Union of Canada, we have Chris Given, Director Government Relations. And from Shipping Federation of Canada, we have Karen Kansens, Vice President. Witnesses, on behalf of all members, I would like to welcome you and thank you in advance for your time and your testimony today. We will begin with opening remarks, and I invite the Association of Canadian Port Authorities to begin. You have 5 minutes. I turn the mic over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to begin by acknowledging that I'm joining you from the traditional territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe peoples. Mesdames et Messieurs du Comité.
Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to meet with you today as part of your study on the state of Canada's supply chains. My name is Daniel Robert Gooch, and I have been in the role of President and CEO of the Association of Canadian Port Authorities for just under 2 months. So, I think I'll be accompanied, I hope she's arrived, I'll be accompanied by Debbie Murray, who is our Senior Director of Policy and Regulatory Affairs, who will support me with some of your questions.
Of Canada's port authorities, including our largest ports like Vancouver and Halifax, but also many smaller ports like Port Alberni and Saguenay. While they are all very different and face different challenges, they are all looking to the future and the investments needed to meet Canada's trade objectives while contributing in positive ways to the communities they serve and operating in financially, socially, and environmentally sustainable manners. Tomorrow, seaports across the Americas commemorate Western Hemisphere Ports Days to recognize the role of ports and the hemisphere's maritime industry and economic prosperity. This year, we are focusing on the role of ports in COVID-19 global pandemic response and recovery. And so your study is very timely. ACPA would like to commend Transport Minister Alghabra and his colleagues in Cabinet for the government's attention to Canada's supply chains. The National Supply Chain Summit in January was a robust discussion on the supply challenges Canada faces today and may soon face, and we support this work. The role of supply chains in the everyday lives of Canadians and the health of our export sectors has never been more prominent than it has been these past 2 years. Canada's port authorities have managed relatively well through the global disruptions we've seen in other parts of the world, but it is not guaranteed that we will be able to manage as well in the future. Our port authorities are fully committed to the work needed to ensure we have adequate exporting capacity for the years ahead, while also participating fully in Canada's commitments on climate change through decarbonization and innovative ways to improve the efficiency of our ports and supply chains. Ton for ton, marine transport has the lowest greenhouse gas emissions, and our ports are improving on that. We have several recommendations on ways to improve supply chains to promote supply chain and navigation corridor resiliency, decarbonization, and trade facilitation. I first want to talk about empowering our ports. While the federal government has a role to play through financial support, as I'll speak to momentarily, greater financial flexibilities for our port authorities would allow many of them to privately finance investments rather than only relying on federal funding. This requires structural changes from the federal government to permit risk-based access to private sources of capital and acceleration of major infrastructure project completion. For example, most port authorities have borrowing limits set decades ago. They are now insufficient to raise the capital needed for many of our port infrastructure needs. Amending borrowing limits must be simpler and quicker. We'd also like to see ports lending criteria determined by commercial lenders, as other infrastructure businesses are able to in terms of accessing capital. Other recommendations include continued national trade corridor funding to support supply chain efficiency, capacity, innovation, and resilience, and to fill the gap in what Canada port authorities can fund themselves within the current regulatory framework and economic realities that each face. Our port authorities have received about $880 million in NTCF funding. This valuable funding is allowing ports to make investments like new technology at the Port of Vancouver to improve container inspection efficiency, and a new Halifax container facility to reduce border inspection turnaround times and reduce port congestion. NTCF funding is helping smaller ports with ongoing maintenance needs and economic opportunities that low volumes and revenues make self-funding challenging. There's more need here, and Canada Infrastructure Bank may be able to help if we can get smaller projects eligible for that bank. We need quicker approval of projects that have gone through appropriate impact assessment consultation. Ports and their partners and communities have invested significant resources into the project approval process. If ports are to optimize their role in supply chains, infrastructure projects must be approved in a timely manner. We encourage dedicated funding for decarbonization and the energy transition. This is a big need across our supply chains, and ACPA recommends a new fund or a specific stream within NTCF. And finally, Canada has become a signatory of the Clydebank Declaration for Green Shipping Corridors, and we applaud that. This is an important recognition of the role of ports in decarbonization, and our port authorities are keen to support it. But we urge the federal government to scale this support to port authorities across Canada. In closing, Canada's port authorities are looking to the future, to how we can emerge and prosper after COVID-19. Recovery is an opportunity to transition Canada into a leadership role in green, inclusive, digital, and resilient port supply chains. The recovery will require trade and global connections to build wealth. Our port authorities will be central to facilitating our country's sustainable recovery. Thank you. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gooch. And now we'll go to Ms. Pasher. Ms. Pasher, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes for your opening remarks.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, on behalf of the Canadian Airports Council, thank you for this opportunity to join you today. I'm pleased to speak to our sector's views on supply chain resiliency, a critical file that has become intensely important over the last several months, including for our sector. We are encouraged by parliamentarians' interest in ensuring Canada's supply chains are resilient and effective, so that Canadian families can count on access to goods like food, medicine, and other critical supplies needed for their daily lives. For our part, we do see opportunities for strengthening our current approach to better handle disruptions and to stay competitive. The Canadian Airport Council represents more than 100 airports across the country. Our members handle virtually all of our nation's air cargo and international passenger traffic, and 90% of domestic passenger traffic from coast to coast. Prior to the pandemic, Canada's airport sector saw over 160 million passengers and employed more than 200,000 people. As members of the committee know, the pandemic has had an enormous impact on our sector, primarily due to the steep drop in passenger volume, which is our main source of revenue. The pandemic has also put into perspective the important role that our airports play in Canada's supply chains. As e-commerce has climbed and the importance of parcel volumes have risen as a share of shipped goods, airports have played a growing role as key transit hubs in a web of global supply chains. Our airports are not only transit points for dedicated cargo aircraft, but passenger flights carry an important share of cargo in their bellies as well. To illustrate further, excluding trade with the US, pre-pandemic, almost 25% of Canada's imports and exports were shipped by air. What's more, 80% of our cross-border e-commerce is transported by air. Express air freight, pharmaceutical and health products, and food and beverages are three categories of goods which rely on air cargo for a substantial amount of transportation due to their shipping requirements. As such, based on the trends, we project our sector will continue to play a growing, important role in supply chains. This means a range of measures will need to be considered to protect those channels to support their effective growth and resiliency, so that Canada's interconnected gateways will effectively get Canadians what they need. For our sector's part, there are a set of key recommendations we'd like to highlight today. The first point is infrastructure. We recommend the continued recapitalization of the National Trade Corridor Fund and providing funding for on-site infrastructure investment and ground access improvements. For air cargo, it will be essential to conduct active forward planning on the use of industrial land and roads around our country's most significant logistic zones, which include airports. We also need to modernize our current foreign trade zones to create real free trade zones that will move Canada forward in its competitiveness and attraction of business. Canada's current FTZ offering is confusing, it's not competitive, and it's an administrative burden with minimal benefit. This does require legislation. With the disruptions experienced in our supply chains, Canada has an opportunity to reap the benefits, but we need to reduce the paperwork and the red tape that create one common digital technology platform to move and clear goods. We need to make it more seamless for companies and shippers to want to move goods through Canada. Navigating a myriad of different legal frameworks and requirements is more challenging in a heavily paper-based environment and fragmented system. All cargo seventh freedom rights are also in need of review. ICAO has been encouraging a wider adoption of all cargo seventh freedom rights to foster greater resiliency in the global supply chain. For us, doing so would create a greater opportunity for trade with the US and an ongoing key source of revenue for our country. Another key element is protecting and developing Canada's labor pool. We will continue to need drivers, pilots, warehouse workers, and beyond. Increasing access to training and long-term career opportunities could be a possible measure to ensure that those workers will be available to sustain Canada's needs. I hope this gives the committee members a helpful snapshot of the role that airports play in Canada's supply chain. That concludes my remarks, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pasher. Next, we have Mr. Masterson from the Chemistry Industry Association of Canada. Mr. Masterson, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes for your opening remarks.
Thank you, Chair Chefke. It's nice to see you again. It's been a while. I am joined today by Kara Edwards, our Director of Transportation. Canada's chemistry industry is the third largest manufacturing sector in the country and the second largest rail shipper. Every day, we ship 550 rail cars. That's over 4,000 cars a week, and we do that 52 weeks out of the year. Our industry, it continues to be robust globally, and in the last couple of years, we're finally seeing some signs that Canada might participate in the surge of new investments that are taking place in the sector. And right now, we're tracking over 10 global-scale chemistry investments in Alberta and in Quebec. And here's the thing, each and every one of those is premised as net carbon zero from day one. And each and every one of those is intended to serve not only Canadian, but primarily global markets. So here's the thing, we've got challenges already. We have critical transportation infrastructure that is deeply constrained at existing volumes. And so we have to call on you as the government and as the committee to take intentional and meaningful steps to grow our transportation infrastructure to ensure that these new products that the world needs so much and that Canada will benefit from producing can reach their intended customers. You also, we have to take from time to time a longer term perspective. And I think of the number all the time, the 100 million people. Canada has an objective of having 100 million people by the end of this century, 500,000 new Canadians a year. Again, the infrastructure we have today, the rail and transportation infrastructure we have today is already constrained. So you have an enormous job ahead of you to convince government and Canadians of what needs to be done to fundamentally allow our critical infrastructure to grow to meet the needs of this growing economy. Our supply chain and transportation network is critical to achieving those objectives, both for our industry and the economy across the nation. The system has to be safe. It has to be resilient. It has to be competitive. And my goodness, most important of all, it has to be much, much more reliable than it is today. And that's not currently the case. We poll our members regularly about their transportation needs and experiences. And today, 76% of our members, again, third largest sector in the country, 76% of our members note that their operations have been negatively impacted by the various supply chain disruptions over the last 24 months. That's a big number. And I'll just add another piece because I talk about this often. 55% of our members have told us they've lost sales in Canada and abroad due to the disruptions in the rail transportation service. So you've heard it already, folks have talked about it, but definitely we need to really make sure the National Trade Corridors funding gets where it's intended and grows commensurate with the needs of the growing population and the needs of the growing economy. Very, very important to help improve the resiliency in our rail transportation network in particular. We have several other recommendations that are submission, and in the interest of time, I'll leave those for now. But I do want to talk on just a couple of them very briefly. Over the last decade, we have seen severe rail network disruptions on nearly an annual basis, whether work stoppages, blockades, lockouts, weather events, too numerous to mention. That includes even actual strikes. And remember, leading up to a strike, an industry like ours, you will be blockaded. You will not be allowed to ship. You'll be embargoed. You can't even put the cars on the rails if we think a strike or lockout is coming, because some of these goods are dangerous and they can't just sit on a siding somewhere. Moreover, at the end of a disruption, at the end of a strike, it can take long weeks to return the system to normal fluidity. So these disruptions are important. They cost billions in lost sales, and it's tarnished our reputation as a reliable supplier. And I think the most important recommendation we would make to you is to look at finding a way to ensure we can avoid the rail labor disputes. Every week that we're disrupted, that's 532 million in delayed or missed sales. And I'll just point out, in the United States, they have not had such a disruption for 100 years. There is the Labor Railway Act that ensures better outcomes for everyone. And we would encourage this committee to look at that experience very carefully in the US. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for this opportunity, and we look forward to your questions on our many other recommendations.
Thank you very much, Mr. Masterson. Next, we have Mr. Dekovic from the GCT Global Container Terminals Incorporated. The floor is yours. You have 5 minutes for your opening remarks.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for the invitation to be with you today as you continue this important study in the supply chains. My name is Marko Dekovic, and I'm the Vice President of Public Affairs with GCT Global Container Terminals. And I'm speaking to you today from the traditional and treaty territories of the Coast Salish people in British Columbia. GCT is headquartered in Vancouver, operating 2 container terminals, GCT Vanterm, with capacity of about 850,000 TEUs, located in Burrard Inlet in downtown Vancouver. And the other terminal is GCT Deltaport at Roberts Bank, near the city of Delta, with the current capacity of 2.4 million TEUs. It is currently Canada's largest container terminal, but Prince Rupert's Fairview terminal is quickly catching up to us. We are anchor tenants of the Vancouver Fraser Port Authority. GCT is a majority Canadian-owned company with 3 institutional investor shareholders: Ontario Teachers Pension Plan, British Columbia Investment Management Corporation, and IFM Investors. Our shareholders are long-term experienced infrastructure investors committed to overall growth of trade infrastructure in Canada and abroad. As a result of our history dating back to 1907 experience in marine transportation sector, we are uniquely positioned to provide input to your committee on this study focused on how to strengthen Canada's supply chain. Firstly, regarding the effects of the pandemic on climate change on the supply chain, there can be no doubt that in the last 2 years have brought a series of major disruptions to overall logistics network, be it from rapid contraction as manufacturing and ports in Asia went to shutdown, or the extreme bounce back as things started opening up and consumers shifted their demands. Canada is not immune from global supply chain challenges. We have seen them materialize in manufacturing, trucking, raw material supply, and inland storage and distribution. Moreover, the extreme weather in BC, namely devastating flooding and forest fires, furthered the problem with closing of rail lines, resulting in backup of cargo ships at anchorages in Port of Vancouver. The impacts are disruptions across the supply chain, increase in shipping costs, and longer delivery times. But it is important to note, however, that container capacity at marine terminals of Canada's West Coast has not been a contributing factor, and there is plenty of container terminal capacity in the system. In fact, Canada's Pacific Gateway has done an exceptional job handling pandemic-driven surges, thanks to a history of incremental, smart, market-driven investments by terminal operators, and industry collaboration such as data sharing, truck reservations, and others, all supported by hard work of essential supply chain workers. As such, supply chain challenges we have witnessed point to a need to solve a broader issue: building resilience to ensure reliable operations at port terminals across the country and avoid more climate-related impacts and disruptions within supply chain. As such, our recommendation is the government should invest in off-terminal, common user, trade-enabling infrastructure that drives resiliency. The supply chain is only as strong as our weakest link. As we have experienced, having one road and rail corridor going through Canada's Rockies that can be washed away due to climate change is clearly a gap that government needs to address. On the second focus of the study, the current state of container transport in Canada, it is important to note again that West Coast container terminal capacity has not been a contributing factor to supply chain challenges. The fact is, Canada has container terminal capacity available to meet current and future demands. At present, there are over 1 million TEUs of excess capacity in the system that does not even take into account the additional 1.2 million TEUs that is currently under construction and will be online in the next 3 years, both in Prince Rupert and Vancouver. While Canada's West Coast may eventually need additional container terminal capacity, forecasts show that it'll be well into 2030s, not in 2025 as some have suggested. Recently released Vancouver Fraser Port Authority's own container traffic report reported a 2% decrease in laden or full TEU volumes and a massive increase in empty container exports. This indicates an imbalance in the supply chain. Furthermore, the port has also reported a 9% decrease in container vessel traffic into 2021, indicating that more volume is being moved by fewer, larger ships. This confirms what GCT and other terminal operators have been saying all along. Upsizing of the vessels and consolidation of ocean carriers does not require building more terminal berths. Rather, we need more supporting infrastructure that will keep the velocity of cargo volumes moving per each visit. Related then, the Vancouver Fraser Port Authority's Roberts Bank Terminal 2 project is a solution to a problem that does not exist. RBT2 will essentially provide more parking spaces for less cars coming to the parking lot. The Port Authority needs to reflect on what is its core mandate and what it actually can do to help address supply chain challenges through collaboration with the industry. As we continue on the path of post-pandemic recovery, our recommendation will be the federal government examine the business case, needs, and requirements for container terminal capacity expansions on Canada West Coast, given the current market realities and well before any significant project-related decisions by government agencies are made. We believe this would be an important undertaking in context of the port modernization review that is reaching its conclusion, hopefully this year. So I want to thank the committee for the opportunity to present today, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dekovich. Next, we have from the Seafarers International Union of Canada, Mr. Given. Mr. Given, you have 5 minutes. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, committee members, for taking the time to hear from us today. My name is Chris Given. I'm the Director of Government Relations for the Seafarers International Union of Canada. The SIU represents thousands of Canadian and permanent resident seafarers working on board all types of Canadian flagged vessels operating from coast to coast to coast. We're very pleased to be with you today to speak to the state of Canada's supply chain. The domestic marine shipping sector and Canadian seafarers play a critical role in supporting and maintaining Canada's supply chains. In the St. Lawrence Seaway and the Great Lakes alone, Canadian vessels deliver more than 230 million metric tons of cargo, worth over $100 billion annually. These vessels deliver bulk cargoes such as iron ore, road salt, petroleum products, stone and cement, and agricultural products for domestic and overseas consumption. North American farmers, steel producers, construction firms, food manufacturers, power generators, and Canadian households all depend on marine shipping. The COVID-19 pandemic has had significant impacts on mariners throughout the world. Through the pandemic, seafarers engaged in international trade have endured great hardship as thousands of workers were stuck on board vessels for up to 20 months, denied shore leave and access to medical care in many countries. Though our domestic workforce were spared some of the more terrible conditions endured by international seafarers, the situation has not been easy. When we speak about building back better, we must ensure that present and future plans respect workers' rights and enshrine workers' health and safety. We're proud to say as an industry that domestic marine shipping has continued without any major stoppages throughout the pandemic. And industry and labor have done well to work together to ensure that vessels continued operating and delivering for Canadians. Of significant importance to the domestic shipping industry, both labor and ship owners, are the regulations of the Coasting Trade Act that dictate that all domestic transportation of goods and passengers must be done on Canadian flagged vessels using Canadian crews. The COVID-19 pandemic has largely drawn attention to the fact that having a dedicated domestic fleet of vessels and a capable and well-trained workforce is critical to maintaining our supply chain security. This segment of the industry, known as cabotage, has largely been spared from the supply chain backlogs and setbacks experienced in the international shipping sector. This is something that has been seen throughout the world during the pandemic, and many countries are refocusing efforts to ensure that they have sufficient capacity for domestically owned and operated fleets to be able to transport goods and passengers. As the committee examines solutions to make the supply chain more resilient, we strongly advocate that cabotage and the domestic shipping sector can play a vital role in alleviating some of the congestion issues that have become increasingly problematic. For example, short sea shipping, that is moving goods via ships over short distances, can act as a complementary segment to road and rail. While large international vessels deposit containerized goods in major coastwise ports, there are very few of these containers moved further inland or through the seaway via smaller vessels or tug and barge. There are opportunities there to capitalize on one of the most underutilized supply chain infrastructures in Canada, being the seaway system itself. As one seaway-sized vessel is capable of carrying the same cargo load as approximately 300 rail cars or almost 1,000 trucks, the use of Canadian vessels to alleviate container congestion is a safe and sustainable alternative. This is already done successfully in the Arctic, where numerous Canadian shipping companies operate the annual Arctic Sea Lift, providing a once-per-season delivery of critical goods, much of it containerized, to communities throughout Canada's Arctic regions. In addition to addressing the need for resiliency, marine shipping can help Canada to meet our need to reduce harmful emissions and address sustainability issues in the supply chain. Domestic ship owners have invested over $4 billion over the last decade to refurbish and build new domestic vessels that use the latest engine and fuel technologies, giving marine shipping the ability to boast the lowest emissions per ton moved by mode of transportation. As indicated in the very recently released 2030 emissions reduction plan, the Government of Canada also plans to focus on the use of ammonia as another marine fuel alternative, and this can only further improve emissions reductions in this sector. In summary, Canada boasts some of the most technologically advanced and lowest emission vessels in the world, owned and operated by well-established Canadian shipping companies willing to invest in additional tonnage and capacity, crewed by Canadian and permanent resident seafarers who are amongst the best trained and most knowledgeable mariners in the world, with continued access to leading training providers at Canada's marine schools and training facilities. As part of the committee's work, we encourage you to look at ways to strengthen this segment of the supply chain and take this opportunity to increase jobs and investment in the domestic shipping sector using Canadian flagged vessels and Canadian workers. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you today, and I look forward to your questions later.
Thank you very much, Mr. Given. Next, we have from the Shipping Federation of Canada, Ms. Kansens. Ms. Kansens, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes for your opening remarks.
Great, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm Karen Kansens. I'm Vice President of the Shipping Federation of Canada. We're the national association that represents owners, operators, and agents of ocean ships that carry Canada's imports and exports to and from world markets. Our members' ships load and unload cargo at ports all across Canada. They carry everything from containerized consumer and manufactured goods to dry bulk commodities like grain and iron ore, to liquid bulks like crude oil and oil products, to project cargoes such as heavy machinery and industrial parts. These ships, which are all ocean-going and foreign flagged, carry virtually all of Canada's international seaborne trade, and they play an essential role in connecting Canada's importers and exporters to customers throughout the world. You know, although we all tend to view Canada's supply chain challenges through our own particular lens, I think we can all agree that the system has been under tremendous stress over the last 2 years. I think we can also agree that a lot of that stress has been precipitated by two key factors. First, we had the global lockdowns and worker shortages created by the COVID pandemic, and then the resulting and unprecedented surge in demand for imported consumer goods, most of which arrive in North America on board container ships from Asia. These events have wreaked havoc on our transportation system, and I'm talking internationally here, causing everything from chronic congestion and slow turnaround times at ports and terminals, to shortages of vessel space and equipment, to delays at many touch points along the inland transportation system, including on the truck, rail, and warehousing sides. And although we're still facing those pressures, we're confident that these conditions will eventually subside, especially as COVID-19 transitions from pandemic to endemic status, and as the current level of demand for imported goods returns to more normal levels. You know, one thing that we often hear is that the current state of the supply chain has been nothing but good news for container carriers, and that their ability to enter into alliances and other types of collaborative agreements is one of the main factors that's made container shipping capacity so scarce and profits so high. So according to that line of thought, Canada should provide for greater regulation of the container sector, mainly by prohibiting shipping lines from entering into such agreements altogether. That action would do very little to resolve any of the bottlenecks, delays, or pricing issues that supply chain stakeholders are currently facing, and indeed could potentially disincentivize some carriers from serving the Canadian market altogether. Operational agreements between container lines are essential components of the global service network, and most carriers rely on them to offset the extremely high capital costs of operating in the container shipping market. Under these agreements, partners agree to share vessel space and operational resources, which allows them to offer regular service across a wider range of ports on larger and more efficient vessels than would be possible if they were all operating individually. About 80% of the world's container shipping services are provided through some form of operational agreements. And I can't overstate their role in ensuring the availability of stable, cost-effective transportation services for the movement of the world's trade. So if focusing on shipping alliances is, in our view, kind of a misguided response to addressing our current challenges, what kinds of actions should we be taking to strengthen our supply chain, and especially its ability to weather future shocks and disruptions? I would suggest that we need to focus on three key factors: infrastructure, digitization, and capacity. First, we need a national coordinated approach to infrastructure investment, one that's linked to Canada's trade growth and trade diversification agenda, supported by clear objectives for approved projects and clear metrics for measuring success. Second, we need a national supply chain digitization strategy, which focuses on connecting the digital platforms that ports and other stakeholders have already built and leveraging the resulting benefits to optimize the performance of the system as a whole. And finally, and perhaps more importantly, we need to find ways of temporarily injecting more capacity into our transportation system in response to specific needs. So among other things, this could mean making better use of underutilized trade corridors, simplifying reporting requirements when ships need to change their ports of call, or removing regulatory barriers that make it difficult to use all available assets in a given situation. And we think it's really this combination of long-term strategies and short-term solutions that represent the best means of positioning our supply chains for success, whatever the future holds. So I will stop there, and very happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kansens. I've been informed by the clerk that there's a chance that you haven't selected your microphone yet in Zoom. And before we proceed to any questioning, we want to make sure that you are able to do that. So if you can confirm that, that would be helpful.
I'm not sure what that means, quite frankly.
Mr. Clerk, do you want to jump in really quick and perhaps guide Ms. Kansens through the process?
Sure, yeah. Just on the bottom left, you should have a little microphone icon, and next to that would be a little arrow. And when you select that, it should give you various choices to select. And we just want you to make sure you're selecting your headset when under the heading "Select a Microphone." Just make sure you have whatever headset you have there selected.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Ms. Kansens. So to begin the line of questioning today for our witnesses, we have Ms. Marilyn Gladu. Ms. Gladu, the floor is yours. You have 6 minutes.
Well, thank you, Chair, and thank you to our witnesses for your excellent testimony today. I'm going to start with my friend Bob Masterson. I heard your discussion about the disruptions of rail service and what we need to do. Do you think that we should be deeming rail service as an essential service and, following the pattern of the U.S. Going instantly to binding arbitration?
Well, we do, and I think we should, we talk a lot about regulatory harmonization with the United States, and this would be a good place to look. But just a slight correction, no, the U.S. does not go first to binding arbitration. The first place is that the two parties table their demands and needs. There's discussion amongst them, just as in Canada. If they are unable to get to a shared outcome, they go to mediation. If that doesn't work, then it goes to they're asked if they wish to go to binding arbitration. If they choose not to, there is a cooling off period. They're given more time to think about their positions. They're given enhanced mediation and ultimately given a chance yet again to come back to binding arbitration. If they fail to do that, parties could still strike, parties could still lock out others. But by that time, there's been so much work done that would be a very rare outcome. So again, in the last, that legislation's been in place in one shape or form since 1926, and we don't see the types of annual rail disruptions we have here. It's in neither party's interest to either lock out or strike by the time you get
Thank you so much. All right, I'm going to go to Ms. Pasher now on a question about airports. I think if we look at the increase in the freight that we're seeing, we do need to do something to get some capacity. And in Sarnia, the airport is actually not utilized anymore. And we do have free trade zone status. And of course, we're nicely located close to the U.S. as well. Do you see that as being the kind of opportunity that you were talking about in terms of getting that expanded capacity?
Yeah, I mean, throughout the pandemic, we need to remember that 60% of our goods were moved through belly cargo. So it's been a tremendous challenge, I think, throughout the pandemic when we saw a lot of our passenger service be eliminated through that time, and it will start to build back, and we've seen air carriers move to freighters. In terms of our FTZs, we really don't have a competitive set up right now for FTZs, and it's an administrative burden. It's barely creating positive impact for companies to come here and to actually value add to products. Like, it's just too cumbersome, and we need to look at other jurisdictions like Singapore, Hong Kong, China, where this is done properly, because we can create a lot of jobs for Canada.
And for Mr. Dekovic, I have two questions for you. You mentioned the change that we need to make in terms of off-terminal infrastructure, and I'm interested to know more about that. And then a shift or an idea to take trucks off the road in favor of marine to reduce emissions. I'm interested what you have to say on those two things.
Thank you for your question. So to the first question, what we were recommending is that investments need to be made in the off-terminal common user infrastructure. So as noted during both the extreme climate events, be it flooding or fires, or during the rail blockades earlier in 2020, the entire gateway on the West Coast, in particular in Port of Vancouver, gets cut off. So you can have 7 new terminals built in Port of Vancouver, and each one of them would be cut off if the infrastructure coming to it, so road and rail, is not enabled, or does it have resilience? So that is something key, and where we feel there's a gap, and that is where government should be playing. Private sector will always invest in a place where rail meets tidewater and road meets tidewater, as it's been the case. The British Columbia Marine Terminals have a long history, successful history of expansions and private sector investments. To your second question around short sea shipping, I believe that was more of a comment from one of the other presenters, but I can comment on it. In fact, as we are advancing our incremental expansion at GCT Deltaport Terminal, Deltaport Berth 4 expansion project. In that project, we've incorporated optionality to have a short sea shipping berth, which could be utilized to move containers via barge in the local regional area, likely up and down Fraser River, should short sea shipping terminals be developed along the river. Of course, moving up to a 1,000 or so TEUs via barge up and down the river could potentially eliminate 1,000 or more container truck movements in already congested lower mainland road network.
Excellent.
In addition to obviously reducing emissions.
Very good. And a question for Mr. Gooch from the Port Authority. What do you think the federal government needs to do to ensure that we have the capacity to grow, both in terms of maybe infrastructure, automation, the CBSA role?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Happy to respond. There's a lot that's involved, as you mentioned in your laundry list, which is one of the reasons why we've been calling for and supporting the calls of others in terms of a national supply chain strategy. Key to that is identifying, nurturing, and promoting key dedicated trade corridors, such as, for example, this tremendous marine highway that we have with the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence system. In terms of investing for capacity, certainly this is very important to Canada's port authorities, both in terms of physical capacity, but also in virtual capacity, which you get by investing in technology and innovation, which improves the efficiency of the capacity you have. I'd say there's a couple of factors.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gooch. You're going to have to save that for the next round of questioning. Next, we have Mr. Vance Badaway. Mr. Badaway, the floor is yours. You have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank the witnesses today for attending this meeting. I heard in testimony today trade objectives. I heard ports recovery. I've heard attention to supply chains, navigation corridor resiliency, leveraging risk-based access to private sources of capital. Ladies and gentlemen, I guess the context of my question is going to be this. Redundancy, investing in strategic multimodal trade corridors, ports modernization, integrating distribution, data, digital logistics, further additional economic potential throughout the Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence Seaway, in my area, the Welland Canal, for example, and the importance of supply chain infrastructure investments, asset management, recapitalization of the NTCF fund, and finally, amending the Port Authority. I would assume, Mr. Gooch, it's the letters patent for the amending of port authorities with respect to including the ability to leverage risk-based access to private sources of capital. Again, leveraging the NTCF, which, by the way, I'm very interested in, because that brings in that private money that leverages the money that we're putting out through the NTCF fund. So I want to concentrate on that point. And this is for both Mr. Given as well as Mr. Gooch. Is it your recommendation that the NTCF fund, the Niagara Trade Corridors Fund, concentrate on supply chain resiliency, supporting fluidity and reliable trade flows? And with that question being asked, be specific in terms of what some of those investments should in fact be. I'll start off with Mr. Given, and then Mr. Gooch will have an opportunity to answer that question.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the member through you. I think it's an excellent question, and thank you, Mr. Badaway. And as you know, the SIU has a very large presence in the Niagara region, so we are very interested in expanding the infrastructure investments along the Welland Canal in particular, and with what can be done with some of the lands that are government-owned in that area. The SIU has been involved with discussions with the Hamilton Oshawa Port Authority on developing lands and looking at sort of what can be done from a multimodal standpoint. If you look at the Niagara region, the tie-in with the rail lines and the access to such a large market via the Great Lakes, I think is really important for marine shipping. And the ways that we can take advantage of some of those opportunities, I think, you could look at some of the vacant land that's along the seaway as a potential container depot where you could have some of that short sea shipping, removing some of the congestion off the highways, off the rail lines, moving containers into that region that can be then trucked or moved via vessel then down into some of the larger markets in the U.S. So there's plenty of opportunity there, and we would definitely be in favor of further investment.
Thank you, Mr. Given. Mr. Gooch?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your question, Mr. Badaway. A lot of what you've asked about is in the report that you referenced last week that was done by the committee in 2019, and there's a lot that's in there that's certainly worth looking at. Speak to a couple of areas. Financial flexibility, certainly, as you noted, there are borrowing limits that were set decades ago that ports are dealing with. Amending those involves amending letters patent, which can be a very timely, time-consuming process. We'd like to see that's improved and sped up, and ideally, ports would be able to access capital in ways other providers of infrastructure are, such as airports, for example. We used to work with our nation's airports, and they work with lenders in terms of the normal criteria for risk that a private lender would look at. The National Trade Corridors Fund, I think, has been a fantastic program for Canada's port authorities. They've received about $880 million through that fund so far. It is allowing for those investments in capacity that Ms. Gladue has referenced. They are investing in innovation, including the virtual capacity. So when we're processing containers more efficiently through border inspection, using technology, for example, that's good for everybody. It's good for efficiency, for promoting smooth trade flows, but also in terms of environmental as well. And efficiency improvements are good on the environmental side as well. There's another need at our ports. I'd say, in particular, our smaller ports need to make investments really just in maintaining their critical infrastructure, and certainly the NTCF has a role to play there, either through continued NTCF funding, which as a program we would like to see be made permanent, or alternatively through a special fund to promote those investments in ongoing maintenance that smaller ports need that may not be able to fund through their own revenues, for example.
Thank you, Mr. Gooch. And just to drill down a bit deeper, we see the NTCF fund has had many mandates in the past few years with respect to what it was gearing its funding to. Do you find that supply chain, investments in supply chain, would be a direction that the NTCF fund should be taking?
I would say it as absolutely in line with the objectives for the program. I mean, the program is trying to meet many needs. I will say, at $880 million going into projects for our ports, that our ports are being recognized by the program, and certainly anything that can improve supply chain resiliency. The investments that ports need to make in terms of dealing with climate change, to adapt to climate change, which also affects resiliency and redundancy. Those are all great investments for the National Trade.
And of course, with that. Thank you, Mr. Gooch. And of course, I'm sorry, I have limited time here. So, and with that is the ability for ports, for example, to be able to leverage the dollars that you would otherwise get out of that fund.
Absolutely.
Okay, and I guess lastly, I'll say this before my time is up, that I would encourage all of you to get involved with the Supply Chain Task Force. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had to sneak that one in there.
Thank you very much, Mr. Badaway. As the former chair, he knows how to squeak one in the last second there. Prochainement, nous avons...
And next, Mr. Barcelou Duval. You have 6 minutes, and the floor is yours. Thank you very much, Chair. I find the testimony we've heard so far extremely interesting. Many things have been mentioned, especially the difficulties we have with our supply chains to have inventory on the shelves. And this, of course, through port transportation. I would like to have heard the port administration talk about the solution to that. Some have said the solution would be to enlarge the current port facilities. Others have said it would be to increase the number of port facilities by adding new ports because we have a limited number of ports at this time. Or there might be a possibility to improve efficiency of existing ports. And maybe from one region to another, the solution might be different. But I wonder, are those potential solutions in your eyes that make sense? And which solutions would be most appropriate? Thank you.
Mr. Barcelou-Duval, est-ce que ces questions...
Mr. Barcelou-Duval, was the question addressed to any one speaker in particular? Yes, I wanted to direct this to the Association of Canadian Port Authorities. I don't have the name. I think it was Mr. Gooch. Thank you very much for that question. I will answer in English, if you will.
The answer is really all of the above. There are investments needed in physical ports capacity, and ports are pursuing those in a variety of ways. There's also technology and innovation. Our Canada's port authorities are very innovative. They recognize that through adoption of technologies like artificial intelligence, we can improve the visibility of our supply chains to see where goods are and shipments are coming from and when they're going and when they're going to be in a certain place, so that all of the various pieces in our supply chain can move more smoothly. And those technological investments, among other things, can help with capacity in a virtual manner. So, I think Mr. Barcelou-Duval, all of the above in terms of the comments that you made. There are a variety of ways that we can ensure both the capacity and the resilience that our system needs are in place for the years ahead, and that these investments are made in environmentally and socially sustainable ways.
Thank you. So all of the solutions would be potential ones, but there is no one which would be a panacea. I would like to see if you have an answer to this. Every time we talk about enlarging facilities or instituting new ones, there might be opposition from local communities or environmentalists who think there might be a risk on fauna and flora or endangered species that might be affected. Might there be any means of the list I mentioned would have fewer impacts along the lines that I suggested? What is your opinion?
Well, I think one of the reasons why we are calling for a national strategy on supply chain and marine components within that is because there are so many stakeholders in our communities that have an interest in the outcome of where we go with our investments, and there's so much riding on us getting it right in terms of the impact on the environment, but also ensuring that we have the long-term needs for Canada. A proper supply chain strategy would look at how all those pieces work together. Certainly our 17 port authorities, these are businesses that are operating federal assets at arm's length. They are doing so for the benefit of Canada, for the benefit of the communities they serve. They are tremendously aligned with the federal government's goals on climate change and the environment. And certainly working through all of the processes that are in place, such as the impact assessment processes, in terms of all of the physical investments that they are looking to make in their communities, because they do understand that what ports do has a tremendous impact on the community and on the local natural environment.
One other question for you. Earlier in your remarks, you said that one of the demands is to get funding through yourselves without ever always having to resort to government funding. And this in regard to the loans mechanism. How would you envisage this mechanism to work if your demand was agreed to? What would be the control mechanisms on level of debt? How would that work? And to what extent would this enable you to put in place some projects without having to go through government approval? And should there be maximum limits? Would this actually enable you to carry out projects more quickly? And how would it all work?
Well, particularly for large projects, our ports today have borrowing limits that are set in letters patent, and my understanding is the process for changing that is very time consuming and lengthy. So one approach would be to improve that process. An alternative is to move away from arbitrary lending limits and move to where ports are able to work with private lenders based on risk.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gooch. Sorry to have to do that to you once again. Next, we have Mr. Bachrach. Mr. Bachrach, you have 6 minutes. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thanks to all of our witnesses for what's been an interesting discussion so far. I wanted to pull back a little bit and ask a high-level question. It seems like this study is a really interesting one because the supply chain is so complex. It has so many different players. Each of those players brings a unique piece to the table. And in many ways, this discussion, I think we could have been having this discussion 5 years ago, and it might have had some similar aspects to it. But something's happened over the past 2 years, and particularly over the past year, that has changed the discussion and that has made people acutely aware of the supply chain. I don't think many Canadians had ever heard the term supply chain until the past number of months. And now all of a sudden, this is what, it seems like we have a major problem that needs addressing. And so my question is really about risk and looking forward at the coming 5 years, the coming 10 years, what our witnesses here today, what they perceive as being the greatest source of risk to the Canadian supply chain. We've heard lots of sources of risk, but if you could put your finger on the single biggest source of risk to Canada's supply chain in the coming decades, and perhaps I'll start with Mr. Gooch from the port authorities. When the ports talk about risk in the more longer term future, what's the biggest one that comes to the fore?
Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. This is an interesting one. From my perspective, 2 months in, there seem to be a few. One would be the risk of delay for getting that capacity that is needed for the near future and the long term. Infrastructure investments, particularly major infrastructure investments of the nature that Canada's port authorities are making, do not happen overnight. We've seen environmental impact assessments can add lengthy delays. We need to ensure we are prepared for the opportunities when they arrive, when they arise, that we're able to take advantage of them in a timely manner, and that means investing years ahead. There's lots of impediments there that I spoke to earlier in terms of the financial flexibility that ports have to be able to make those investments themselves, working with private lenders. The National Trade Corridors Fund, I'd say, has been one that has helped, tremendously. Resiliency and redundancy is another big challenge. We saw, of course, the disruptions in Vancouver. We need to ensure that our ports themselves are resilient, but also our system is, and so that we can adapt to major weather events. It's not just a West Coast challenge. Another example is the East Coast. There's just a narrow bit of land that connects the peninsula that is Nova Scotia with the rest of the country, and that's where our goods from the ports of Halifax go across to the rest of the country. So it's ensuring that capacity is there for the future, and that we have a resilient system with lots of redundancies built in to ensure that we're able to get through whatever the planet and the world throws at us.
Mr. Bachrach, before you continue with your questioning, and I'll be sure to stop the time while you're doing this, can you select your microphone, please?
Yeah, you betcha. Okay, it's...
Let's try that.
Perfect.
Is that any better?
That's perfect. So
My
I'll start your
apologies, Mr.
timing. You
Chair.
have no worries. You have 3 minutes left.
Okay, well, I'm tempted to ask that question to some of the other witnesses. Maybe I'll ask it to Mr. Dukovic. When you think about risk in the decades to come, risks to Canada's supply chain, what rises to the top? I'm thinking particularly of external risks that threaten our supply chain.
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. It's simply to do with the resiliency of the pipe, road, and rail, or the gateway corridor, if you want to call it. That would be the number one risk. If you look at investments that are happening both in Port of Prince Rupert, where the Dubai Ports World terminal operator there is working hand in hand with the Port Authority and making investments. You look at Port of Vancouver, be it the grain sector, the breakbulk sector, and the container terminals such as ourselves making significant investments. That is not where the risk is. So there is no risk that the private sector is not going to invest in the capacity. But if next year there's another flood, if next year there's another fire, what have we done to ensure that all those investments and terminal operators that have occurred on the West Coast can continue to provide services to the supply chain? So it is that risk. How do we build additional road, rail, gateway pipe, if you will, for the supply chain to reach the West Coast? That is the number one risk.
Thanks for that. And it's a great segue into my next question. You're familiar, of course, with the plans in Prince Rupert to expand the port's capacity. It's an exciting phase for them, and they've seen tremendous growth over the previous years. Could you explain how investing, and you touched on it a little bit, how investing in alternative ports builds redundancy and how it can alleviate some of the pressures that we see when there are major events that cut off access?
Yeah, great question. I mean, Prince Rupert, as you noted, making investments there with their container terminal operator. You have here in Vancouver ourselves building our Deltaport Berth 4 expansion project to again add capacity. So ports and port terminals will be ready, but the question is, how do we get goods to them, and is one redundant for the other? I would say to that, yeah, Prince Rupert and Prince Rupert container terminals, we saw when there were challenges in Lower Mainland that some cargoes did move there, but ultimately also Prince Rupert is a slightly different offering. There is no 2 million plus local market up in Prince Rupert, so it's a great gateway port serviced by one rail line. But again, we should be looking at that as well as resiliency of Prince Rupert for Vancouver. Should it have more rail capacity, more diversity of offerings there to truly be a backup for the Vancouver Gateway?
Thank you very much, Mr. Dukovic, and thank you very much, Mr. Bachrach. Next, we have Mr. Genereux. Mr. Genereux, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes.
Oh, it's yours, right? It's you. Oh, okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good to see a lot of familiar faces here again, particularly Mr. Gooch and Mr. Dukovic. We'll focus, I guess, some of my questions to you guys. We're seeing a lot of supply chain issues facing the housing market. So when it comes to supplies and materials, when we're building homes, so when I look at places like to you, Marco, the English Bay, and seeing a number of those barges out there, which I have a variety of materials on them, but they continue to sit there for months and months on end. And I understand, a lot of the solutions come from, as we heard last time, artificial intelligence and other high investment pieces. However, when we're facing the situation we are right now, hoping that you'll be able to supply us with some supply chain things that we can suggest here that are more immediate. So when again to probably start with Marco and then maybe on to you and Mr. Gooch. I pick on the Vancouver port, and it was brought up that it's on both sides of the country. But if we could focus there, perhaps just to start would be helpful.
Thanks to your question. So I assume when you're referring to the barge in English Bay, you're assuming to one barge that has beached itself.
Other than that barge, yeah. That's the one that's seizing everybody's attention, but other than that one barge.
Yeah, so there are vessels. There are vessels in anchorages in Port of Vancouver that you would see in English Bay. There are a variety of vessels, mostly bulk ships. There are some container ships, so I really can't comment much on the bulk carriers. But on the container ships, yes, there's about a dozen or so vessels that are backed up across all terminals. So there's 4 container terminals in Vancouver, as you know, 2 operated by GCT, our company, and then 2 by Dubai Ports World. And we're catching up, working away as the rail velocity starts picking up, and really that has been the challenge. The reason the vessels are backed up in anchorages is because of the velocity of rail has been challenged since both the fires and then subsequent floods. It is picking up. We're working very closely with our rail supply chain partners, and we're working on strategies how to quickly get back to normalcy in the supply chain. But it'll take some time. It'll probably take another 90 or so days to get there. But there's light at the end of the tunnel.
And maybe before we move on to you, Mr. Gooch, just on that, Marco, if you don't mind commenting, I remember when we were there a few years back as committee, and you provided a wonderful opportunity for us to see it firsthand. There's some real trucking issues where a real backlog. Is that less of a factor now as you speak to rail, or is that also on top of the current trucking concerns that were there in the past?
Yeah, local drayage issues largely, in my opinion, have been solved largely due to the collaboration between provincial and federal authorities. We have for a while now implemented truck reservation system. There's also payments paid by terminal operators to trucking operators if we take too long to process. Those are all innovations that don't exist in other ports. We operate 2 terminals in Port of New York, New Jersey. There, in New York and New Jersey, there is no truck reservation systems. There is no financial incentives for terminal operators to move trucks through the gates. We're seeing some emergence of reservations in LA Long Beach, but it's still long ways away of where our terminals operate in Canada. There's no night gates either. We've been operating night gates as the demand requires for trucking, for a while, probably since 2014 or 2015 now. And those things are just not occurring in other port complexes across North America, and particularly in the U.S. So we have addressed those challenges largely. Probably the only thing we're hearing right now from the trucking community is the rapid increase in gas and costs of fuel to continue providing the services that truckers do.
Great, and maybe over to you, Mr. Gooch, on just some of the immediate solutions that we could suggest as a committee as part of a report after the study.
Well, Mr. Dukovic had some great comments on what's going on specific to Vancouver. I'd encourage you to meet with Vancouver in terms of what they're looking. I know in addition to their work on the longer term capacity concerns, they have some immediate concerns around container capacity available to them and storage for containers. Industrial lands in the Vancouver area, for example, is a big concern for them. But really, I wouldn't want to get into too much Vancouver-specific issues, given my newness, at the organization, and they're much better at speaking for themselves than I am on their behalf.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gooch, and thank you very much, Mr. Genereux. Next, we have Mr. Iachino. Mr. Iachino, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes.
Merci.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning. Dear colleagues, it is a very interesting topic, and my question is for Mr. Gooch or Ms. Murray. Could you explain how a climate emergency on the West Coast last year affected the port systems, and what lessons can we learn? Thank you.
Je peux commencer.
I would like to begin, if you will.
I'm sorry, is that directed for me or? Yes. Okay. I will proceed in English. I don't feel like I can speak to what specifically was happening in Vancouver. I think probably the biggest lesson that we can take away from that, however, is that we do need to plan for more events like this. And I know, the word that's been used a lot here is resiliency. And that's one of the, that's really a key word for us in terms of what we're talking about. It's resiliency for the individual ports, but it's also for our systems, so that when there are disruptions, that we have alternatives and places where we can move goods, alternatively by sea or by other modes of transportation. It's really important. There's so many players involved, as we see around the table. I mean, you had the study last week, you have the study today. You could probably have several more sessions, because there's so many different players involved in this. I think one of the best things you've done is bring everybody together through the National Supply Chain Summit that we had in January. Even within the federal family, we saw how many individuals within cabinet hold a key portion of our supply chain. It's not just Minister Algabra, it's not just Minister Champagne, and that we're looking forward at Canada's Port Authorities to see where this work goes next. The work of the task force and the various working groups that stem from that summit.
Merci, Mr. Gooch.
Thank you, Mr. Gooch. Now, could you describe for us how collaboration unfolded between port authorities and different levels of government, industry, and other stakeholders during that crisis? What worked well, and what were the challenges? Thank you.
You know what, I have to say, given that I started in February, I'm really not the best to weigh in on that, because I was not there. I was, at the time, facing challenges with our airports. And could testify on that, but that's not what we're here for today. So really, I wouldn't feel comfortable answering that, just given I was not here at that time.
Does anybody else have a response for that? Parfait.
Very well. Mr. Gooch, could you describe how all of the backlogs in recent years have affected our ports? Thank you.
Well, my understanding is our ports have actually managed much better than could have been, and certainly better than other ports in other parts of the world. It's certainly, when we see major disruptions, it really just highlights the need that ports have identified to do things better, to make those investments in capacity, but also to make investments in other ways beyond physical capacity, to provide better line of sight on what's coming in and leaving through the ports. There was a great example in Montreal, for example, when we had an urgent need to get personal protective equipment into the country to deal with the pandemic, and the port, working with different organizations locally, was able to come up with a system fairly quickly to identify where there were products that we needed to get off those ships and get out into the community, so that we could do so and fight the pandemic in a timely manner. What I've seen in my 2 short months here, is that our ports are incredibly nimble, incredibly innovative, and very committed to working with their local stakeholders on innovative solutions like that, to be able to respond either in real time to blockages when they're occurring, or ideally to be able to plan for them, so that we can mitigate disruptions as best as possible.
And can you elaborate on some possible solutions to making our supply chain more efficient and more resilient?
Well, a lot of the investments that are, I have spoken to the physical investments in capacity. So, when it takes longer for, say, to get containers off of ships, you need a place to store those containers. That's why industrial lands is, a big preoccupation of several of our ports. There's also the innovation in technology. The greater visibility of what's in our supply chains, what's coming to the ports, whether it be from sea or from land, and so that we can plan for it, to get everything moving, keeping everything moving in a smooth and timely manner.
And one quick one.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gooch. Thank you very much, Mr. Iaconu. Next, nous avons Mr. Barcelou-Duval. Mr. Barcelou-Duval, vous avez 2 minutes et demie. La parole est à vous.
The floor is yours, Mr. Barcelou-Duval. Thank you, Chair. Since the pandemic, we've observed that many air traffic companies have turned to cargo to earn additional revenue. And we have the impression since then that there's been an increase in cargo and freight transport. I'm wondering if it really is the case. And is this the type of change that we are going to see sustained over time? And if so, to what extent will it need change for airport infrastructure? Thank you. And the question is for the Canadian Airports Council.
Merci. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our airports and airline carriers certainly have seen a move to freight throughout the pandemic. I mean, our passenger traffic went down 90%, and part of the reason we stayed open was to connect people for essential movement and to move our essential goods. So we have seen many of our carriers convert their aircraft to freighter, or which we're calling Praetor, but I do think that we're going to see more freight traffic moving forward. Pre-pandemic, 60% of our goods for air cargo was moved in the belly of the plane, and about 40% freighter traffic. Throughout COVID, we've seen about 55% freighter traffic, and that's a global stat. So we do expect to see more of this moving forward, but also as we move back to having, to building back our air capacity, which we're going to see some improvements in that this summer. And as we move forward, hopefully, I think we'll see a lot of our goods move in the belly of planes again. And so I think we'll see a shift, but it won't be permanent.
Perhaps a question for the CIAC. There have been talk about empty shelves, and many have raised the point that it might well be relevant to shorten our supply chains by turning to local production. Now, in the case of the SIAC, would that make sense? Unfortunately, Mr. Duval, we don't have time for an answer to that question.
Mr. Bachrach, the floor is yours. You have 2.5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd like to direct my next questions to Mr. Given. Mr. Given, you spoke a little bit at the beginning about the impact on workers in your sector that occurred at the beginning of the pandemic mostly. In terms of workers being stuck on ships. And I wonder if you could expand on that and speak a little bit to what role the federal government could have played to alleviate some of those conditions that your workers faced.
Thank you very much for the question. And I guess I need to differentiate between the domestic workforce and the international workforce, because the worst conditions were really endured by international seafarers engaged in global shipping. I'm an elected representative with the International Transport Workers Federation based in London, who has an inspectorate around the world that inspects foreign flag ships when they come into various ports. There's 3 of those inspectors in Canada. And what occurred at the when the pandemic came about was basically the maximum allowable under the ILO Maritime Labor Convention for a term on board a ship is 11 months. And because of the pandemic and the various lockdowns that occurred at the beginning, there was an extension of contracts that was basically agreeable and understandable for a short term. But those extensions ended up going 17, 18, up to 20 months, where seafarers were not allowed to get off ships to be repatriated. And not only were they not allowed to be repatriated, but the majority of flag states, so countries and ports, refused to allow foreign seafarers to engage in shore leave, so to get off their vessels. Many weren't able to access medical services in countries because of lockdowns. So the conditions were really hard. Here in Canada with our domestic workforce, they endured a lot of the same, but to a smaller scale. So contracts had to be extended, terms on board vessels had to be extended. And again, shore leave was denied for many of them. So I have to give credit to Transport Canada and Port State Control, because they did do an effective job at eventually helping those seafarers. especially with the foreign seafarers visiting Canadian ports, but it took too long to get to that stage. So by the time that port state control officers were enforcing that maximum period, a lot of these seafarers had been on board for 17, 18 months and were forced to sign contract extensions because they work as exploited workers in a lot of these circumstances. So it's been a very difficult condition for workers.
Thank you, Mr. Given. And Mr. Chair, do I have a few more seconds for another question, or?
You have 35 seconds.
Okay, fabulous. Mr. Given, I was interested what you said about domestic shipping, and my assumption is that right now, the different shipping modes are largely, they exist in a competitive environment, and shippers are able to choose the mode that gets the goods to market in the best way possible. You mentioned the low carbon nature of domestic shipping. I'm wondering what specific investments the government could make to drive that transition towards domestic shipping, towards that lower carbon mode of transport.
Thank you for the question. I'll try to be very quick. I know that there is a lot of investment and talk about investment happening with regards to low flashpoint fuels. So using ammonia, LNG, hydrogen as alternative fuel sources because they are lower emissions fuels. So further investment in that and further study and research and allowing ships to trial some of these different fuels would be very helpful, and not just trialing the fuels, but ensuring that we have the training to train our workforce to be able to handle those fuels safely.
Thank you very much, Mr. Given. Thank you, Mr. Bachrach. Next, we have Mr. Muse. Mr. Muse, you have 5 minutes. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for taking time out today. We've had a fairly robust discussion on ports, and so I want to I might come back to that, but I want to turn the attention to the Canadian Airports Council, Ms. Pasher. In my constituency, Flamborough-Glanbrook, Hamilton International Airport is one of the crown jewels in our economic crown for the region, and it I think, as you know, is the largest overnight express cargo airport in the country, and it's growing. For example, DHL opened a facility a year ago at the Hamilton Airport, and they had a 15-year plan to expand to evolve into somewhat of a North American hub. And they're already at that point a year later. Amazon just opened a facility adjacent to the airport at the end of January. It's one of only 2 of that level of facility for Amazon in the country. And so maybe you can elaborate on what more Transport Canada can do, what more the Government of Canada can do to encourage these important cargo hubs as part of our supply chain resiliency.
Mr. Muse, I think we might be having a technical difficulty here. Okay. Mr. Clerk, do we still have the witness, or did that?
Let's see who frozen.
Yeah, it appears she's frozen. We'll have IT.
So, Mr. Muse, what we'll do is I'm gonna give you the time that you've lost back to you, and I encourage you for the time being to try and ask a question for another witness if you could.
Okay, fair enough. So let me back up then on the question that Mr. Bachrach just asked of the Seafarers Union, which was his perspective was with regard to the environmental aspects of or benefits of marine transport. But maybe you can talk a bit more about domestic shipping, and maybe the Ports Council can as well. That's an opportunity. Again, the Hamilton Port is in proximity to my riding. The steel industry, agricultural commodities are shipped, and I think there's great opportunity. And Mr. Badaway's asked about, the National Trade Corridors funding, and there's been a discussion around that. But what more can be done to really encourage that short sea shipping and domestic shipping via these assets that we have in our area?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the member for the question. So from our perspective anyway, and I'm a workers representative, but I think I can speak a little bit on behalf of the Canadian shipping companies if they, I'm sure they would allow me to do so. All the Canadian shipping companies are very interested in taking up this work. It's work that's not really been tapped into at this point, and I'm speaking specifically to containerized shipping. The majority of Canadian shipping is on bulk and break bulk cargo, so moving, like I had mentioned, a lot of natural resources and petroleum products. But moving consumer goods or containerized goods is sort of an untapped area, and I think there's a lot of potential there. And it's not at all to take away work from the rail or the trucking lines, but to really diversify the ability to move goods out of ports. We're hearing a lot about congestion in ports, so I think that it would be useful to look at alternative ways to move some of those goods. And there is a lot of opportunity, and there's a lot of underdeveloped land along the Seaway. And it's not just in Hamilton, Oshawa that we discussed before, but all along the Seaway. There's been lots of discussion about how to tap into sort of the U.S. Midwest market with Chicago and Cleveland and access to, even the GTA. There's about 500,000 containers moved into the GTA every year, but that's done on truck and rail. So if we can diversify that a little bit and move more of it via the marine mode, I think that would be beneficial for everybody.
Mr. Muse, I can confirm that we have Interim President Pasher back. So if you want to re-ask your question.
Thank you. Hopefully the technical difficulties have been figured out. So my question was, Hamilton International Airport is located in my constituency, and I think, as you know, Ms. Patcher, it's the largest overnight express cargo airport in the country, and it's certainly growing rapidly. We had DHL locate there about a year ago. They had a 15-year plan to evolve into a North American hub, and they've already achieved that 1 year later. Amazon, I think, as you know, just opened a facility at the end of January adjacent to the Hamilton Airport, and it's one of only 2 of that level of facility for Amazon in the country. And so maybe you can elaborate on what more Transport Canada can do, what more the Government of Canada can do to seize upon these important cargo hubs as part of our supply chain resiliency.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your question. Sorry, I lost service for a minute. Yes, Hamilton has seen tremendous growth. They are primarily a freighter airport, and a lot of growth throughout the pandemic. And really, the National Trade Corridor Fund has been helpful for them to expand their infrastructure. And I think part of what we've seen throughout the pandemic is that because they've expanded that infrastructure, they were able to grow. And we've seen that at other airports throughout the country, in Halifax and Edmonton, and the projects that were approved years ago and have been underway, then they now had that expanded apron space. They were able to receive some of these shipments by air cargo to keep our supply chain moving. Really, air is playing an increasingly important role in getting goods to market or exports to market, but also getting goods here to Canada. So I think really what we need to do is to keep investing in the National Trade Corridor Fund. Our airports have only seen about 18 projects be approved since it was announced in 2017, just over 220 million. And much of that was for small airports as well, to pave their runways, things like that. So I think really focusing in on the cargo needs to improve our supply chain for Canada moving forward. Some of our airports have asked for a dedicated air cargo line item in the National Trade Corridor Fund at about 100 million a year to really move forward and to invest in the future so that our airports are able to play the important role they've been playing throughout the pandemic.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pasher, and thank you very much, Mr. Muse. Next, we have Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And first of all, thanks to all of our guests for their testimony today, their knowledge and expertise, and that feels good to hear on this very important and interesting topic. Mr. Masterson, question for you, in which Mr. Gooch might want to also chime in on that one as well. What role could better data collection and data sharing play in improving our supply chains? And can you give us some examples to illustrate that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. MP Rogers, for your question. I'm going to defer to my colleague, Kara Edwards, and she'll talk especially about the importance of data and information to level the playing field between shippers and rail companies. Thank you, Kara.
All right. Great to see everybody at committee. Thank you so much. A lot of information that's in the system right now is not as transparent as it could be. So we'd really like to see the publication of the amendments to the transportation information regulations. And in our sector, that would really assist in helping to identify where some of the bottlenecks are. And it would really even the playing field and making sure that everybody's seeing the same thing, using the same metrics. So with better information, you can make better choices, you can do better benchmarking, and you can really have consistent tracking. In our case, we see that there's a really imbalanced relationship between shippers and carriers. And so in addition to making more data available and transparent, we'd also like to see the authority of the Canadian Transportation Agency and the remedies that they have improved upon as well. And regarding the transportation information regulations, we're really interested in seeing the amendments which we believe will have better geographic and better commodity specific information in them. Thank you.
Just a follow-up question, but first, Mr. Gooch, you want to make a comment on that question?
Yes, thank you. I don't have a lot to add. I will say that digitalization and better visibility on what's moving through ports is very important for Canada's port authorities. Certainly, knowledge helps. Greater knowledge about what's going on in the port and the routes leading up to and leaving the port is certainly very valuable for improving the efficiency of operations and our supply chain overall.
Just as a follow-up question, Mr. Masterson or any others, would your organization or member companies in your organization be willing to share proprietary data with the aim of improving the fluidity of our supply chains? And if so, under what conditions? Is there some kind of information that you would insist on keeping confidential?
Kara, best to you. I got some big answers, but you get the specifics.
For sure. I think we'd really need to explore what that would look like. Generally, companies are a little bit hesitant to share information regarding pricing and rates, as well as potentially confidential relationships between them, their suppliers, and their customers. So if we'd definitely be open to having that conversation to see what we could do, and are very supportive of having a more transparent information system within the supply chain.
And MP Rogers, that said, certainly our industry is always providing information to government, and there are procedures to do that to protect confidential business information, and anything that we can provide that will strengthen the transportation system and improve the relationship between shippers' rights and those of carriers, we will gladly provide you under the correct protections for confidential business information. We
Thank
do it
you.
all the time.
Question here for the Seafarers group. Mr. Given, how do you propose to increase the number of mariners in Canada? And are there things we know or could, I guess, do short-term to address worker shortages?
Thank you for the question. It's an excellent question. Right now, the worker shortage is definitely an issue, but we need to differentiate, I think, between where the shortage exists. So we have two different classes of employees on vessels. We have licensed and unlicensed. So licensed includes officers and engineers, and that's really where we find the shortage. And that situation in Canada is the exact same globally. It's actually worse globally. So basically the international associations have taken a survey of this, and the labor report for last year indicated that there was a shortage of 28,000 officers worldwide, and there was a surplus of 30,000 ratings worldwide. So it really draws attention to the fact that we have mariners in the system, and it's the same situation in Canada. We just need to work on training those mariners to occupy those higher ranks and those higher levels. And I think that involves working with the companies, but it also involves securing funding for training and different things that we can work with the government on in the future.
Thank you very much, Mr. Given, and thank you very much, Mr. Rogers. Next, we have Ms. Gladue. Ms. Gladue, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. And I think I'll start talking about the bureaucracy. Many of you, when you were talking about what we needed to do in supply chain, you mentioned some things. I know the port mentioned financing, borrowing limits, allowing commercial lenders. If I could ask all of the witnesses, please, to submit specific things that the government needs to do to reduce bureaucracy. If you could submit them to the clerk, then they can be included in our study. That would be really good. Now, the next question for Bob Masterson. So you had talked about where we have rail constraints, could you describe a bit more about where those constraints are and what solutions you'd like to see?
Yeah. Thanks again for the question. It came up earlier, what about the next 5 to 10 years? And that's not really the issue, right? We're trying to attract investments in facilities that need to produce for the next 40 years. And I come back to what I mentioned earlier about Canada's stated population goals. We're talking about 2.5 times the population over the next several decades, 2.5 times the economic activity, at least, hopefully more. And you think of the places where we're struggling now. I mean, we were once and still are major resource exporters. We process more of it now, but we're still major resource exporters. And that was fine when the people in our cities where our major ports and rail lines were contained had a stake in that activity. They were direct participants. That's no longer the case. So picture Vancouver growing 2.5 times over the next several decades. Do we really think we're going to move 2.5 times the rail freight traffic through there? Don't think so. Halifax? I don't think so. Montreal? I don't think so. Toronto? I don't think so. So again, we would challenge you or call on you as this committee to think about Canada's long-term economic and population objectives and where are we going to put these ports? Where are we going to build the resiliency? Certainly the work we're doing today, and it's been talked about a lot today about, debottlenecking and getting some better efficiencies out of what we've got today. Of course, that's terribly important, but we need to make sure that we're going to have the ability to move product out of this country for the next 40, 50 years. And those are the investments that are being made today. So we think we have to turn our sights away from just focusing on some of these major cities where we're already seeing the constraints between populations that don't have a tie to this activity and what we're going to need to do today and in the future. So you pick any major city, but especially the lower mainland through Vancouver is terribly constrained when it comes to moving our goods.
Excellent, thank you. One of the ideas that was suggested in previous testimony was that we need to develop more international ports from some of the ports that exist. For example, Sarnia-Lambton could be an international port. It's on the Great Lakes Waterway. There are numerous other ones, and that this would help with growth capacity as well as resiliency on constraints. Would you agree that is a good idea?
Is the question directed to
I'm going to
myself?
direct this question to you and then to Mr. Cooch.
Sure. I think so, definitely, and there are opportunities, and every customer and every shipper is different. What I would say again, when you think about Canada's chemistry sector, is we largely ship in the United States, so enhanced movement across the Great Lakes could be helpful. But the future is really Asia. Now, maybe with recent issues in Europe, certainly we're looking at, everybody's looking at what the future of Europe looks like. But we're really talking about ocean going. And as a nation, we are less productive when we have to handle things multiple times. The idea of we're already hampered. Think about where much of our industry is in Western Canada. We already have to go over the mountains and down to the coast. The more times things are handled, the more costs there are and the less competitive Canadian businesses are. So I think the answer has to be a focus on the railway system, which moves most of our commodity goods, and the sea-based assets that will help get them to the global markets where the populations are.
Very good.
Definitely room in the Great Lakes, but that's the big picture, is the seafaring ports.
Mr. Gooch, what do you think about this idea of developing more international ports from the ports that exist across the country?
Well, certainly we see ports that see opportunities to provide better services, more services. And I think to the Great Lakes, for example, which in the 2019 report that your predecessors in this committee did listed, greater use of the St. Lawrence Seaway as the number one recommendation. Of course, this entails, working with our partners, including our partners within the federal family, CBSA, to ensure that adequate resources are available, both at any ports that want to aspire to receive international traffic, but also for those existing ports that need those CBSA services as well. So, there are opportunities there, but it obviously needs to be examined against all of that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gooch. Thank you very much, Ms. Gladue. Next, we have Ms. Katrakis. Ms. Katrakis, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all our witnesses for being with us today. My next questions will be addressed to Mr. Dekovic, GCT. I understand a shortage of containers, we've talked about it a lot this morning and this afternoon, is one of the major causes of problems with global supply chains. Do you see this shortage as a temporary problem or potentially a longer-term structural challenge?
Thank you for that question. I would say it's a short-term challenge. As I mentioned in my testimony, the number of full containers moving out of our ports was down by 2%, but probably about a 50% increase in empty containers moving out. That is due to the imbalance in supply chain, where the empty containers are being more rapidly evacuated back to Asia due to the growing consumer demand surge. And so that kind of volume is being sucked up that way. That will return back to normal as the supply chain normalizes. We actually, on Canada's West Coast, have a pretty balanced trade compared to other North American ports, which are much more import ports only. We do export in containers. We, our terminals handle exports of lumber and specialty crops and other items. So it's pretty balanced. So I would say it's a short term, and we can probably see some stabilization coming, later this year in that balance.
And do you think that manufacturing could be a solution? Is this something that can be done in Canada to address some of this shortage? And if so, how long do you think it would take to increase the supply on a scale large enough to address the shortage?
Are you talking about the
like if we were to manufacture them in Canada, is that something you think that's possible?
I'm not the expert on container manufacturing, but I would say, the time that would take, it would probably be too late, because by that time, the system itself will normalize itself.
Thank you for that. And my next question is to Mr. Gooch.
You formulated recommendations on the way the NTCF could be improved to meet the urgent needs for port infrastructure, and this with a view to contributing to a more resilient supply chain. Could you elaborate in more detail what those recommendations are? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The NTCF has been a great program. Certainly $880 million have gone to our ports through that program. I think when it's really more about where there may be gaps. One of the challenges that have been identified to us is in terms of the ability for ports, particularly smaller ports that may not have as much revenues as other ports to maintain critical infrastructure. So not necessarily, sometimes it's to invest in opportunities that are available, but other times it's just to ensure that the critical infrastructure continues to be there and continues to be available. We also want to ensure that the NTCF continues to be funded properly. And it was great to see an influx of funds in the federal budget last year, and we hope to see that continue on an ongoing basis, because there is a tremendous demand for these investments. The program is currently slated, we understand, to sunset around 2028, and certainly we see this as a permanent ongoing need, and so we'd like to see the fund be extended. Another opportunity would be to look maybe a bit more in terms of decarbonization and whether the funds and programs with or channels for funding within that program are sufficient to meet the needs of what our ports and other partners in the port community are trying to do to improve efficiency and contribute to Canada's climate change goals.
Thank you. And this question goes out to anyone who has an opinion on this. And I know it's a large question, but let's see what you can come up with. What, in your view, is the single most important recommendation this committee could make in its report? Anyone? Maybe Mr. Masterson or Ms. Pasher.
Sure.
Go ahead, Ms. Pasher. You've not had much to say. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the question. I think the biggest thing that we could do is to recapitalize and continue make permanent National Trade Corridor Fund. When I look at the airport's important role that they've played in the supply chain and will continue to do moving forward, our airports have taken on $3 billion in debt. And that, ultimately we need to manage that debt moving forward. And this is a Canada competitiveness issue. And we need our partners in the government of Canada to help us move forward and invest in our infrastructure that we're going to need to improve the resiliency of our supply chain moving forward. So I think that is probably the biggest way the government could help us move forward in our supply chain.
Thank you very much, Ms. Katrakis, and thank you very much, Ms. Pasher. Next, prochainement, nous avons Mr.
Next, we have Mr. Barcelou Duval. You have 2.5 minutes. The floor is yours. Thank you, Chair. My question is for Mr. Masterson. Earlier, I had actually started a question, but we did not have the opportunity to hear your answer. And it was concerning the relevance of shortening the supply chains and in what way this would be relevant for the chemistry industry and also stabilize and make more secure the supply chains. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. It is complex and it depends on what chemistries or what products you're involved with. I think certainly there's an effort to improve the resiliency of supply chains, and you're going to see that, those of you in municipalities, you're going to see significant demands for industrial lands being converted to warehousing to make sure we have, let's just say broadly moving away from just-in-time delivery. But if you look at our chemistry industry, again, as the third largest manufacturer, the truth is the bulk of that activity, that $80 billion a year, is that it is commodity exports of very resource-rich, low-carbon assets that the rest of the world doesn't have access to. So we're exporting those, $60 billion worth, and we're importing $60 billion worth of specialized chemicals and other comparable goods. So the trade is balanced, but we're sending the things we're good at and that the rest of the world needs, and we're taking back products typically that have a lot more labor involved with them. So I don't think that's going to change, and I think the world and Canada would be harmed if there's an effort to become, this notion of truly self-sufficient, that we only make the things we need. The world needs what we make, and we've got a duty to get it to them. And in exchange of having all of the great trade agreements that Canada's negotiated over the last few decades, we get to take advantage of the things they have that we need. So I'm cautious to say anything too much other than there's a lot of work underway to improve resiliency, and that's largely moving away from the just-in-time delivery to more warehousing, larger inventories to take care of some of the challenges we've seen in recent months and years. Thank you. Others may feel different.
Merci pour. Thank you for those comments. Maybe a little question for Mr. Giffen. With a labor dispute in the Port of Montreal not so long ago, one of the things that made the situation so difficult were the working hours. Now, given the problems with supply chains, to what extent does that play into the fact of needing to ensure a movement along the supply chains? Unfortunately, have no time to listen to your answer, but please send your answer in writing. Thank you, Mr. Marcel-Duval.
2.5 minutes. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to all of our witnesses for what we've heard today. My last question here is about community impacts, and particularly when it comes to the rail sector and rail transport, which is a top concern in the region that I represent. I know we don't have the rail sector represented among our witnesses today, but the rail mode and the marine mode are closely linked. And so I think my question is probably to Mr. Gooch from the Port Authorities. When we look at Canada's rail system, I think there are some key vulnerabilities. One of them being the fact that the rail lines pass through so many communities. There are so many points of tension, and we see with increased rail traffic, we see those tensions increasing. The other, of course, is that we built the railroad on Indigenous land without their permission. And there are serious and outstanding issues when it comes to the relationship between the rail sector and Indigenous people across the country, particularly in Western Canada. Is the federal government investing enough energy in managing those impacts? I think of, municipalities here in Northwest BC. I saw that CN just turned down the idea of building a pedestrian overpass in the community of Terrace. I hear from community members in Prince Rupert, where I am today, that are concerned about noise from shunting in the rail yard. All of these concerns increase with increased traffic. So it seems like it would be a key concern for people involved in the supply chain to manage these impacts. And yet we see the federal government taking a very hands-off approach to those issues when they come up. Any comments, Mr. Gooch?
Well, I don't know that I can speak to the rail situation, but certainly I know our ports work very closely with the community because they understand that they have an impact on the community. Many of our ports are right there in the heart of the urban environment, and noise, dust, other factors are our concern of the communities in which our ports are located, and so they have worked very closely with the community to mitigate those impacts. I did a tour of the Port of Montreal a couple of weeks ago, and I lived in Montreal for many years, and I didn't even realize just that the port was right there for much of the south shore of that island. They took us out to areas where they really connect very closely to the community, where they're right, up next to the community, and there have been investments made into barriers to keep the sound out, into greenery to mask the visual appearance of the port. This is the kind of work that our port authorities are doing from coast to coast in terms of working with their communities, as well as working with their Indigenous communities and the First Nations in their region as well.
Thanks, Mr. Gooch.
Thank you very much,
Mr.
Bachrach. And thank you very much, Mr. Gooch. Colleagues, given the fact that we started a little late today due to some technical issues, I'm wondering if we have consent from members to sit until approximately 12:07, just to ensure that Mr. Chahal and Ms. Gladu can ask their full range of questions. Do I have unanimous consent from all the members?
1307.
Yes, 107. Okay, seeing no objection, Ms. Gladu, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I want to pick up talking about the CBSA. Sarnia Lambton has got a border, and we do hear occasionally that there are issues, not enough inspectors or too much time for inspection or not adequate training in the ever-changing rules. Is this a consideration in terms of our supply chain resiliency? Let's start with Mr. Gooch.
Thank you. CBSA is an important partner for our ports. I know they've been called upon to adjust to rapidly evolving situations over the last couple of years. I know that we do have, we want to ensure that there is adequate capacity at all of our ports to do their important work, and that includes capacity and systems in place at our border agency. I'm more familiar with CBSA from my time on the airport side, where I know that they were making tremendous investments into modernization of the border from passenger perspective. Certainly CBSA is an organization that's not afraid of innovation, and we look forward to working with them on what they need to provide the service that's so important that they provide in all of the communities where that service is needed.
So, that you're not seeing any issues there. Ms. Pasher, could you tell me about the same question with respect to airports and expanding the capacity? Do we have adequate CBSA resources? Are there issues there that the federal government should pay attention to?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. I think Daniel touched on that. CBSA has been a great partner and a very innovative one, and I think are looking at ways that we can move forward, working together, working very closely with industry to digitize our border so that we can move people through quickly. And I think that will help. It will take time, obviously, and regulation tied to that. In terms of data, though, I really do feel like we can work with CBSA and other partners to improve digitization for the supply chain. We need all partners working together. We need more transparency for our data so that we can strategize on how to improve this, so we can actually operate like they do in China and other countries, where we can make it easier for trade and people to want to move goods through Canada. I think there's a lot of opportunities here, and CBSA plays a big role in that as well.
Very good. And same question for Ms. Edwards from the Chemistry Association.
So I think some of the things that we're looking for would be to publish the amendments to the Transportation Information Regulations, more remedies for shippers through the CTA, and as well to continue on with the Railway Safety Improvement Program. We're currently using that program to help reach out to communities, ensure that they're aware of the dangerous goods that move through their area, as well as prepared should there ever be an incident. So I think there's a lot of things being done, and they really need to continue as well with the National Trade Corridors Fund. So a lot of continuation on with the good programs that are already there, and having the confidence and consistency that those are going to be there for the long term.
Thank you. Mr. Dekovic, you had mentioned that we don't have an issue with container shortage in Canada, but I continually hear about supply chain issues due to lack of containers. So what is happening there? If you could help us understand, where is the bottleneck and what do we need to do about it?
Yes, thank you for your question. So yeah, there is no issue with container terminal capacity or shortage thereof, but there, as you said, there is a shortage of physical containers that some of the Canadian exporters may want to use. And the challenge there is, as I mentioned, is the extreme consumer demand pressure for the North American market that is resulting in ocean carriers and exporters from Asia evacuating containers to Asia more rapidly. Without them having a chance to go sort of into a cycle of the supply chain here, where it may get stuffed, be it somewhere in Ontario from a manufacturing facility, or somewhere in Western Canada with grain products, or specialty crops in British Columbia, or lumber. So because the containers, once they come off the ship, are quickly emptied, they're returned back to the terminal and evacuated on the next vessel out. There's a shortage sort of empty containers in the system. But as I mentioned to an earlier question, we see that imbalance is going to start settling down.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gladio, and thank you very much, Mr. Dekovic. Our last line of questions comes from Mr. Chahal. Mr. Chahal, you have 5 minutes. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, and I want to thank everybody for their testimony today. Ms. Pastor, I want to start with you. You talked a lot on the importance of airports. Calgary International Airport is my constituency. It's been, I think, $8 billion of GDP it brings to the local economy. So it's very, very important, and the National Trade Corridors Fund has been a tremendous help and support with the building of Airport Trail for our region. My question to you is, you touched upon in your testimony regarding foreign trade zones or free trade zones or corridors where we need to make improvements on. And you specifically, I believe, mentioned that Singapore and Hong Kong do it well. Could you please elaborate on those comments, and what are the opportunities for Canada to make improvements there?
Yes, currently our foreign trade zones don't provide much benefit, to be really honest. They're an administrative, cumbersome burden of paperwork, and without a lot of benefit to our communities and in creating in job creation. So if we looked at our foreign trade zones to create actual free trade zones, we would probably see a lot more manufacturing and goods coming in and people adding value to them and exporting out of Canada. Like, we can create jobs here by creating the right system around free trade zones. So we think we need to look at that and what improvements can be made to the current system. I think there's 8 foreign trade zones in Canada now, but there's not much value add. So they're really not providing any benefit. It sounds good, but I think we have a lot of work to do to actually make this a viable program that could help our airports, our communities, and help Canada.
And so you mentioned Singapore and Hong Kong do it well. What do they do that's so well with us?
It would be less taxes. So right now, when goods come to Canada, so like take for example, if you have a chainsaw coming from Germany and it's certain parts, and you want to add the parts to it and then export it from Canada as a Canadian product. Like right now, the paperwork around that, the value add taxes that go on it, we're not actually creating value for Canada to do this. They are doing that in Singapore, in Hong Kong. So I think there's examples out there that we can look at to say, like, we're competing for that business. And right now, how we're set up, we're not getting the business.
Thank you. There's been a lot of talk about supply chain vulnerability and opportunities and challenges. And I was reading our report, and you may have not seen our briefing document, but it talks about the Canadian imports and exports are concentrated through a very small proportion of hubs. And once again, to you, it says Toronto International Airport for air imports and export is our only international airport for clearance. So what's the impact of that on our country and our supply chain? And why not have an opportunity in Western Canada, such as Calgary, for that clearance port?
I'm not sure I fully understand the question. I'm like Daniel Gooch in that I'm only two months into this interim position, so I might be missing a little bit of context on this one.
No problems. I can, if somebody else wants to touch on that specific on clearance ports, imports and exports that are concentrated through few hubs, and Toronto was deemed to be the only one for air imports and exports.
It's certainly not my knowledge. Like I think, a number of our airports, receive goods. I'm not sure if you're referring to Seventh Freedom rights where for air, no?
Yeah, and I'm just referring back to the briefing document. Maybe I'll follow up with our analysts on that.
I think there are ways to improve. I guess, if I look at some opportunities, like you have a carrier from the Middle East and it would take goods and take them to Philadelphia. And then we would have an empty plane come from Philadelphia, let's say to Halifax, to then pick up lobster and go back to the Middle East. So we're missing a piece in our supply chain where a plane is coming from the US to Canada empty. And I think that there are improvements that we could make on Seventh Freedom rights in terms of, taking advantage of some of these routes that are in existence now and ways we could capitalize on them.
Chair, I don't know if I have any more time.
That's all the time you have, Mr. Chahal. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Witnesses, on behalf of all members, I want to thank you first for your patience with some of the technical issues we experienced today, but more importantly, for your valuable testimony on a very important study that we're conducting for all Canadians. With that, I invite you all to log off, with the exception of my honorable colleagues, whom I want to just send a quick reminder to send any drafting instructions you may have for the Railway Safety Study report to the clerk once you have them. With that, everyone, have a great rest of your day. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.